Hi, everybody. My name is Sophie Alcorn. I'm the founder of Alcorn Immigration Law. I'm a certified specialist by the State Bar of California Board of Legal Specialization in Immigration and Nationality Law. Best-selling author of Ask Sophie, the Founder's Guide to Visas and Green Cards, which is available on Amazon, on Kindle, and paperback, and soon to be Audible. I recorded my first audiobook. It was very fun. That'll be live soon. I just got the files last night. I'm based in Palo Alto. I like to meditate. I'm a mom, and my vision is to create a world in which every person has the chance to live their dreams and follow their heart and build the things they think are cool wherever they want to be in the world. And I'm so thrilled to have a very special, and we have a team and everybody's brilliant, and I'm honored to work with such amazing attorneys and paralegals. But today I am super honored to be joined by our client, Deedy Das, who's written extensively on his EB-1A journey, founding engineer at Glean, which just had an exciting fundraising announcement, studied computer science at Cornell. He's a prolific writer. I think you have over 60,000 followers on X at this point, Deedy, and also proud EB-1A recipient. So thank you so much for joining us, and thank you for being here. We really, really appreciate it.
Of course. Thank you. You know, I love to tweet about immigration just so I can help people out. So it's my pleasure to help anybody who needs my help in this arduous journey.
Thank you so much. And I'm going to be asking you a lot of questions today about the specifics and how it went. And we had a whole experience together. So very, very appreciative of your willingness to be here and also be available for people's questions, right? So to everybody in the audience, you are welcome to put any questions in the Q&A panel, and you can either choose to write them anonymously by ensuring that your Zoom settings have your name listed as anonymous, or you don't have to. You can use your name, but this is a public forum. You can put in any questions to Deedy about his immigration journey or anything else you want to ask him. He might answer it if he chooses to. I'm happy to answer anything about the details of the EB-1A I-140 process, priority dates, the visa bulletin, the I-485, all of that. And we'll try to get to as many questions as possible. We do have some materials to share about just like what is the EB-1A in general, and hearing from Deedy himself about his story and his journey. And to answer one of the questions we got, this is being recorded, and we're going to send an unlisted YouTube link to everybody who registered. So you will be able to refer back to this. So thanks so much for that question. So EB-1As have been on the rise, and it's in this legal class of immigration petitions for extraordinary ability. And there's a visa, which is for 3 years and good for indefinite renewals. And that's the O1A. And that has this definition of extraordinary ability in it. But the EB-1A is for a green card. And that's an employment-based immigrant visa, which is permanent residence. And why would you want it? You would want it because it's the fastest type of green card. Premium processing is available, which is currently 15 days. And I'm just going to share a few slides about, you know, what is the EB-1A and how does this process work? Because I think it'll be helpful to everybody who's curious about fast tracking their green card. You know, what's the legal framework that this fits into and how it might apply to you. So in a green card process that's employment-based, you have to first get a petition approved, and then you have to do your adjustment of status I-485 application. So the petition in this case, the I-140, you can do it as a self-petition. You don't need to go through PERM first, like your company sponsor would need to go through for an employment-based petition. There is premium processing available. It's 15 days right now. A lot of the stuff with USCIS fees are in flux right now, because they're trying to do a fee increase in April, and they're trying to change the speed of premium processing from 15 calendar days to 15 business days. So if they change it to 15 business days, it would be like 21 calendar days. So instead of 2 weeks, it would become 3 weeks. So, but it's still the fastest way to get a decision on a petition is if you use premium processing. And then, and that's really where you prove to the government, you know, what Deedy did. He basically, in the legal paperwork, said, hi, my name's Deedy. I'm extraordinary. Here's all the amazing things I did. Please let me come to America. And America agreed, right? And so once you have that established and you have a priority date, and you could use a priority date from a prior green card petition, but whenever it's your turn in line on the visa bulletin, then you get to shift to part 2, the I-485, which can take 18 months, it can take 6 months. It's kind of all over the place. We're seeing some prioritization right now for people with EB1As and artificial intelligence and machine learning to kind of get their I-485s through faster. So, you know, knock on wood, fingers crossed, that'll apply to everybody here. But that's where each person in your family, you, your spouse, any kids under 21, that's where you do your actual green card application for adjustment of status if you're in the United States, and your travel might be restricted. So that's important to keep in mind. You're going to get a work permit along the way. It might come in the form of a combo card, which is work and travel permission. And there could be a green card interview at the end of it. So, but that's actually where each person in the family says, you know, hey, it's me, I'm in valid status. Here's my cleared background check. Here's my health records. Please let me into your country. I'm a law-abiding person. So there's these 2 separate phases. People come to us because they want green cards, or they want to fast track their green card for lots of different reasons. Could be for your immediate family, like maybe your spouse is on H4 or O3 and can't work, but you know, wants to have a career or a business, so they need a work permit. Or maybe your kids are in high school or college and you don't want them to have to go through the F1, H1B journey and lottery themselves. Maybe you want the freedom of being able to travel on a green card to spend more time with your parents, or you know, not have to do H1B visa stamping in India whenever you want to travel, or deal with the mail-in pilot program. Or maybe you just want to get a US passport so that you can travel the world more freely and you don't need Schengen visas anymore, for example, to go to Europe. A lot of our clients want to advance their career. They want to be able to choose their own projects. They want to be able to say no to projects. They want to work in controlled technologies, and ITAR and export control licenses are a lot easier to navigate through if you have a green card. Because you're working in critical and emerging technologies. And a lot of people want to be able to have the freedom to tinker and figure out if they can be entrepreneurs, and if they want to pursue that journey, and they want the flexibility to fail and launch and iterate on different projects and not have their family's immigration status tied to, you know, however their startup seems to be doing that week. So a lot of reasons bring people to this webinar. And it's just really important to start with the end in mind. So knowing if you want a US passport one day, or knowing if you want a green card, and knowing how soon, and knowing why, all of those factors help us shape somebody's immigration journey. So I'm going to turn it over to Deedy in just a minute, but I just want to share a couple more things. The EB1A is the fastest way to get a green card. It's also one of the hardest ways to get a green card. But the acceptance rate fluctuates, I would actually say. It is the easiest green card with which to apply at any time of year and get through the process the most rapidly, regardless of which country you were born in. We're going to take a look real quick at the visa bulletin on the next slide, and then you want to keep that premium processing and I-485 timing in mind as you're going through this. This is the visa bulletin. It's official production of the US Department of State. It's a website. It gets updated every month. There's final action dates in chart A, and there's dates for filing in chart B, and then USCIS, which is part of the Department of Homeland Security and processes the I-485s. They refer to the State Department charts, and every month they decide if they're going to file chart A or chart B, depending on how the green cards are being allocated for the world that month. It's always in flux. I mean, the whole reason of why we have this is because of the Immigration and Nationality Act of 1965 was trying to create diversity in immigrants coming to the US. So it said, well, we don't want too many people from one country, so we're going to limit the allocation of green cards in each category every year to people of a certain country to only have a certain amount. So the result is there's backlogs for people born in India and China in the employment-based first preference category, but those backlogs are much less than in the employment-based second or third preferences, which is where most where most companies will sponsor green cards through the PERM process is through EB2 and EB3. So for example, in March of 2024, USCIS is following the State Department's final action chart. So if you were born in India and you're trying to file your adjustment of status in March of 2024 in the EB1 category, you need to have a priority date prior to October 1st, 2020. So if your company did PERM for you and you got your first EB2 I-140 approved in 2017, you can actually use that old 2017 priority date with a new EB1A petition from 2024 and then skip to filing your I-485s because hopefully, knock on wood, your priority date will remain current. So much information. But now I'm going to ask Deedy to share a little bit about his immigration journey. So, and once again, Deedy, thank you so much. And I hope the rest of this will be more interactive and collaborative. I just wanted to get through some of those basics first. So walk us through your timeline. I mean, you've written extensively about your journey, but you're from India. You came to the US as a kid for elementary school for the first time, right? And you've gone back and forth throughout your life, and now you've been working in Palo Alto. Can you tell us a little bit about your story of how you first came to the States and what kept you coming back?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Sophie, for the introduction, for hosting this event. So my background is, like you said, I was born in India, which is the death knell for US immigration, as some people will know. I was born in India. My family
One of
moved.
the things that I appreciate about you is your candor. So I'm just going to start by saying that. Thank you.
Thank you, Sophie. And I hope the questions, I hope everyone feels free to ask questions.
Yeah.
Keeping the candor in mind, I'm very happy to be honest and candid.
Okay.
Our family moved to America, to the Bay Area, when I was 3. I spent elementary school in America, which is why I have this accent. I came back to India when I was 10 and then did middle school and high school in India. And when I was 18, I came back on an F1 for college, where I went to Cornell, did my undergrad and my master's. And then I moved to New York for my first job. Initially, I was in two big tech companies. I was at Facebook and then Google. I was on an H-1B the whole time. And after 4 years while I was at Google, I did move around a little bit. So I spent about 6 months on and off in Israel. And then I got a very interesting opportunity to move to Bangalore. And the reason that was relevant is the year and a half that they offered me to spend in Bangalore, I was thinking at the time, hey, this might be a really opportune moment to maybe come back to the US on an EB1C. So at this point, I was on an H-1B. I was fortunate that at my first job at Facebook, I made it through the lottery on the first go. In fact, one of the reasons I did the master's was solely to increase my H-1B odds and not have that be a problem.
Wow.
But later on, there's 6 years of an H-1B. And the first barrier is, hey, let me make sure I have an EB2 filed with my company so I can buy myself time. And at this point, I didn't really have a very strong sense of where I want to be long term because everything is in flux with immigration. But I wanted to keep my doors open. I didn't want to be forced into making a decision. So I thought, let me get my EB2 done. Let me get a priority date, and then we'll see after that. So once the EB2 was figured out at Google, my priority date's in 2018. I thought, hey, there's many other reasons I like this project in Bangalore, but one of the side consequences or the happy benefits could be that I could come back on an L1 and then convert that to an EB1C as a multinational manager, because I'd be managing a team in Bangalore and I could come back and manage a team. In 2019, I while I was trying to execute on this vision, it sort of dawned on me that, just coming back to Google and working and doing this whole charade for a visa just seemed
Mm,
like a waste of time. Like it seemed like I would really be like I wouldn't love my job because I'd know that I'd come back and I'd only be doing this job for an EB1C. And many people do that and have gotten their visas that way. But it didn't quite sit right with me. So, and very fortunately at that time, it was about the time where I was thinking about, you know what, big tech companies are not something that I want to do or commit to longer term. One of the reasons I am committing to a big tech company is the visa security. Because, one thing that people would say very often is just this hand wavy, visa startups, I don't know, it sounds too risky. And we internalize that, I think, as immigrants, that, this is way too risky. I don't want to risk it. What if the startup goes under and I lose my status and I have to leave? But there was a company, Glean at the time was starting, and it was very, very early. So I'd spoken to the founder, the sole founder there, and then I joined in the early team of 5 or 6 people at the time, and decided to abandon that EB1C journey. But when this was happening, at the back of my mind, it was very clear that it was about time that I started thinking about what my immigration options were.
mhm.
And I narrowed it down to, like, to be honest, like I could marry a US citizen, and I don't know how I would do that, and I don't know how I would do that in a way that's not very, like, there's some people who do it. That's not for me. I cannot.
And I'm just gonna butt in here as the immigration lawyer and say, thank God you didn't just marry a friend for convenience, because that's a recipe for disaster in so many layers. But the immigration reason not to do it is because getting a green card through marriage requires a good faith marriage, which is defined as the intent to share a lifetime together. And sometimes people say to me, yeah, but they're not paying me and we are going to live together. They're just my friend and they're going to help me and it's my roommate. Like, no, do not do that. Your marriage is going to be inspected at multiple points. And if you are determined that you've committed fraud, you can get deported and it's a lifetime ban to coming back. Not to mention that it just trying to imagine what that would be like. It would be a very difficult and uncomfortable life to have your immigration status hanging on one person. So anyway, that's my interjection. You completely did the right thing by not considering that path. Thank you.
Oh, I wasn't really gonna considering that path exactly, but what I was saying is there are friends of mine who kind of mentally have decided, hey, I know that the number one thing that's important to me is to be in America, and I don't see a route for me to do that. So if I am single and I'm looking to date, I will just restrict my pool to people who I know can
Right.
make the dream
Okay.
happen for me. So
Which would be legitimate for immigration purposes, but it's also very difficult. I mean, online dating is hard enough, but
It's
anyway.
it's it's a difficult way to lead your life. So I thought, this is not something that's really realistically feasible. Instead, the options were few and far between. So I looked at the EB5 investor visa for a bit. A lot of my friends had done that as well. And then I came to the
And they
EB1.
made that easier lately because you can concurrently file an I-485 now, which is nice. You didn't used to be able to do that. But what was your trade-off in, like, do I invest money in EB5 project versus invest like time and energy into myself?
The main trade-off for me was it was more a personal reason. I think
Mm.
it didn't sit right with me that I wanted to invest just to stay in the country. Um, it's a big investment, it's a large sum of money. And if I were to go through the process of doing that, it felt like I was buying my way into the country. And personally, I felt like, look, if it's that hard, I'll move to London. I
Oh,
mean, like, it doesn't really matter to me as much to be in America for
yeah.
me to go through that EB5
Okay.
journey.
Okay.
So for me, I'm like, look, let's try the EB1A first. And hey, look, if that doesn't work out, maybe I can come back and consider that as the next option.
Yeah.
So that's when I started my process. I was initially working with a different law firm. And I've had not great experiences with that firm. I'm not going to name them, but it was slow, unresponsive, not very helpful, kind of had taken on too many clients, and the person who was running the firm had been having health issues and wasn't really there to supervise. And I realized about a year in that I was really dragging my feet. It's a really tedious process, and there are certain kinds of people who can really commit and go like, hey, 6 hours every weekend, I'm gonna do this, this, and this, and review these docs and send this to my lawyer, but it's really tedious and it's not that much fun. So I dragged my feet, and then I thought, hey, this lawyer is not doing it for me.
Mhm.
And through some friends, I was recommended to talk to Sophie, and
Wow.
that experience was very different. I think from day one, it was very clear that there was follow-ups, there was clear deadlines, there was clear progress that I could show to the EB1, and net, it took me 3 years to apply it and get it, which is a long time, but predominantly it took me so long because I dragged my feet on applying,
Yeah.
on getting my documents ready, on getting the recommendations in place. But finally, as of this year, or as of last year, I was approved for it. I still haven't received my I-4085 yet.
Yeah.
And the last thing I will say is, on this note, is what I tend to see. Of course, being Indian, EB1 is the only realistic way I can get it in a short amount of time. But because a lot of my friends were also applying at the same time, what I observed is it is, in addition to everything that Sophie said about the advantages, as soon as a lot of my friends got an EB1A, it's like they keep telling me a switch flipped in my mind, and I just thought about my entire life in a different way. So they changed careers, started companies, did whatever they wanted. Some people took a break, went on vacation, did all sorts of things, and I think it's severely underrated, the kind of psychological impact it has when you actually know, hey, I've sort of figured this out.
Oh.
Uh, so that was my little rant about
Oh, I
myself.
have goosebumps. Thank you. That's incredible. Oh my gosh. Okay. Everybody has so many questions for you. Thank you. It was really inspiring, Deedy. I want to share a couple more things and then I'm going to open it up. I have some more questions for you on your EB1A journey specifically. And then I see we have a lot of audience questions. So we're going to open it up. Um, just to get some things out of the way, you don't need a million citations. It's not just for researchers. I don't care if you ever went to college, you could be a high school dropout and still qualify. You don't need a company to do this for you, and you certainly don't need a Nobel Prize. So a lot of people can actually qualify. And then in general, these are the 8 requirements that EB1As have in common with O1As for people geared in the sciences, engineering, or business. There's a couple more EB1A criteria for artists. So like if you're a UX UI designer, we might avail you of some of those. But the 10 years ago, people thought you had to be a scientist, professor, or researcher to get an EB1. And then I was trying, and some other immigration lawyers were like, well, how do we help startup founders? Let's figure out how to get them EB1s because we got to keep them in the country somehow. So we adapted all these criteria to help people in early stage startups. And then it's now progressed where people who are engineers in large technology companies can self-petition EB1s. You don't need a research affiliation or a startup affiliation. All you need to do is meet 3 out of the 10 criteria by yourself and show that you have this, sustained national acclaim and that your work is in the US national interest, which is easier now with the president's executive order on artificial intelligence and critical and emerging technologies. There's a lot of people that the US wants to keep here right now. So like in general, did you win any awards? Did people write stuff about you? Did you create something? Did you lead some organizations? Are you a member of organizations that are hard to get into? Did you judge people's work? Did you write stuff? Did you make a lot of money doing something? Those are the things that we typically ask, and a lot of stuff can adapt to this. And the right law firm will think about your whole case holistically and use the best stuff from your past to make the best argument for you. They shouldn't be like, somebody asked me, like, do you charge by the criteria? Like, if I do 4, is it more expensive than 3? I'm like, no. We're just going to make the best case for you possible. It doesn't matter what you have. One of the other issues is people who on F1 who haven't graduated yet or on STEM OPT or on H-1B, you have very limited options for employment. Either you can't work at all, or you can only work at one company. So a lot of our clients get O-1As through agents to be able to work in a variety of jobs prior to filing the EB-1A to do paid work that can bolster their EB-1A credentials, but you don't have to. We've also had several people who have zero work authorization become qualified for EB-1A through things like volunteering, laying the groundwork for a startup, doing stuff with groups and networking organizations. You can do all of the EB, you can do most of the EB-1A things to build up your portfolio of accomplishments without working in, and so you will maintain the requirements of your current immigration status. So there's a lot of ways to do it. Part of this is getting letters of recommendation. We help you draft them. You have to ask people to help you. That can be an emotional block for some people, but it's important to practice asking people for help. You will probably be very surprised that people do want to help you, and they'll be happy to sign. And of course, they can edit the letters and tailor them, but you can make it really easy for your recommenders. And, you know, if at first you don't succeed, try again. There's ways to do this, and you don't have to be qualified at the beginning. So anyway, this is, this got put in this deck. This is from my book, but essentially what my dad always said was, you know, courage is doing the right thing even when you're scared. It's different from bravery, right? Bravery is like, you're just looking for the fight, doing anything random, but courage is when you're following your heart. And so, Deedy, I think you have a lot of courage. And stuff happens along the way, and you have to be prepared for this. And maybe Deedy will share some of this stuff, but one of the things is like, what if I fail? What if I get an RFE? What if I get a notice of intent to deny? What if something gets screwed up? How do I navigate it? Do I keep fighting? What do I do? What's the best strategy? And so being prepared and having people you can trust, right? Friends, lawyers, whatever, to talk to on the way is really important to have an accountability and support network. Alex is going to put the links in the chat window. I do have an online class with 15 video modules called Alcorn Academy Extraordinary Ability Prep. And one of my clients recently was saying that one of the most beneficial things is how in each of the videos I go through many redacted requests for evidence that we've received so that you can understand how the government is looking at each of these criteria and look at how to build your case and what type of evidence you want to do. We also have a credential evaluation program for $2,500 called Legal Launch, where we'll give you our checklist. You will upload all of your documents, and within 4 weeks, we'll let you know if we can accept your case or if you need to go and specifically work on more stuff before we think you're qualified. And we'll give you a personalized checklist of what else to do, which can be very, very helpful. Okay, so now what I want to do, we have some more webinars coming up, so do check that. And I'm just going to leave our contact information up for a few minutes, and we're also going to open up audience questions. But let's see. Excuse me. Maybe for now, what we can do is I'm actually going to stop sharing my screen, and then Deedy, I want to confirm that you can hear me, and I'll ask you to unmute yourself. And I'm just going to do one thing. Okay. And then, okay, excellent. So fabulous. Okay. I think what we're going to do now is I have some questions for you. And then we have so many wonderful audience questions, 25 questions. So we're going to try to get through as much as possible. I'm really excited to ask you these questions. So first of all, what was the best thing about your EB-1A journey?
The best thing about my EB-1A journey was honestly getting an EB-1A.
Okay.
This is one of those things where the reward is definitely is better than the journey.
It's not about the journey in this case. It's about the reward. Yeah. Okay, great. What was the worst thing about the process?
I think the worst thing is psychologically having to prove to yourself that to constantly be reminded that you have to prove to the government that you're worthwhile of this specific category of visa to make your life easier. is just not in natively in my DNA. It's a lot of like randomly bragging about yourself, which is for legal purposes, and it's just not enjoyable. And one of the reasons I drag my feet is because, I'm pre-chat GPT era. I'm sitting trying to write some letters of recommendations, and I'm like, this is just me saying that I'm super important to this company and I'm super this, and it feels wrong because you are important to the company, but no one wants to write about themselves in that much detail. And you're writing 6 letters of 1 to 2 pages each. It is just really painful to have to go through all of that. One other bad thing about it, that's on the personal note. The other really bad thing about it is when you're working with lawyers and you hear other friends, because there's so few data points that you have yourself to learn from. There's so many myths in the process. So somebody will just say, for example, when I was applying, there were friends of mine who would just reach out and go like, hey, I heard if you include a diagram which tells you on a map where you've published stuff, then that will help you get an EB1A. And there's no way to
Oh, wow.
disprove or not all of these myths that you hear. And they'll say all sorts of things like, hey, this recommender that you had, I don't think it's going to be valuable because you know what? Unless they're a CEO of a company, not valuable. So you keep hearing these things which always screw with your head because you're like, I don't know. Is that true? My lawyer said this and my lawyer said this. And it's really hard because there is no one playbook to make this work. So that is quite frustrating in the process.
Okay, we're getting a question from the audience, which is, which of the criteria did you use for your evidence? Do you remember, and
Um,
would you be?
I would love to share the blog post which goes like when I detail my journey and what
Okay,
criteria I applied for.
we'll
At
put
the
that
end
in
though,
the
I think I
now. Okay.
had leading critical role, high salary, published material, quite a few of them. I think I overdid it a little bit. But I think I had, I don't know, 5 to 6, I want to say, like a bunch. I don't,
Yeah.
so we could talk to this. I don't really recommend it. I think I was just paranoid and I just wanted to make sure I covered my bases as much as I could.
You're very
Which didn't
thorough.
help because after all of that, I still got denied and then I had to apply again. So, I,
Yeah, it was crazy. Can we talk about that for a few minutes? Are you okay with
yeah.
sharing that? Like you wrote about it, but it was insane. We got a horrible RFE from a super angry adjudicator. It's so random who you're going to get. Most of these get approved all the time. And we got somebody who just was having a really bad day or something. And we were looking at it and we ultimately decided we wanted to withdraw, but then they pulled a fast one on us and denied it because they didn't want the withdrawal to go through. And then we had to refile and we had to get the denial undone. And it was a huge mess. I mean, I'm so sorry you had to go through that. And literally, this is like the only time in hundreds and hundreds of clients this has happened. But I appreciate you sticking with it and with us, and also, just your desire to like see it through. And you had your eye on the prize throughout the whole thing, which I think really, really, really helps.
Yeah, I
I
mean,
don't know.
I don't
Curious
think how
about
much
that.
I
That's
have.
my comment question.
I don't have anything to add to that. I think it wasn't an RFE though. It was a NO, it was annoyed. It was a notice of
It
intent to
was an
deny.
NOID.
And then we withdrew, and then the denial didn't get the denial. It was denied anyway, and then we had to talk to them to get it reversed. All sorts of things happened. It was very frustrating while it was happening. But the thing I took away from the entire experience is there were 4 or 5 of my friends who were applying in and around the same time, and I realized that it's a really bad idea to treat this like a college application where you associate your self-worth with what is the decision, because there are people who are frankly not very impressive, but for whatever reason they get accepted, and there's other friends of mine who are super impressive and then they get rejected. So the
Yeah.
correlation, I would say, between how you perceive somebody's success or not versus what their EB1A decision is non-existent. It's a very legal case, and in my opinion, from what I've seen, it's kind of crapshoot. Like there's some people who will just get it, and there's some people who won't, and it doesn't say anything about what you've written or what you've done. And I don't think you should perceive it to be like that. Conversely, There are people who get it and then pretend they're Einstein, which is not true. You are not a world-changing person just because you got an EB1A either. It's just a legal process, is what I've learned.
Okay, thank you. Yeah. And if you take the class, you can see lots of examples of requests for evidence. A few, I don't know that we've had too many notice of intent to denies, but it's essentially like they go through the legal criteria and they're like, we think you have enough articles, we think you have enough associations, but prove to us why your original contributions, disrupted your industry, or prove to us why your salary with your equity at your startup is high or whatever. And then they're like, or, even with all of that, we don't know if you rise to the legal standard of like national acclaim. So that's typically how those work. And that's why it's so important to do as thorough of a job as possible. But I echo what you said, like you can't trust your friends as like we wish for a standardized thing, but some people are like, from like a Scandinavian country, like, will my physics application be submitted to a panel of US physicist experts to determine if I'm of the caliber to come to the United States? I'm like, no, this is a person with a bachelor's degree who's a government bureaucrat who's had some training, who might be in like Vermont, right? Or whatever. And they have like 21 minutes to flip through 700 pages of paper to make a determination about your life. So we just have to give them as many reasons as possible to approve you as quickly as possible. So like, that's what it boils down to. Oh, okay. And I love all the questions. I'm going to try to answer them as we go through. I also wanted to ask you, like, and you spoke about this a little bit more. What was that moment? You talked about how you were looking at like a corporate life of safety at Google to map out your immigration journey that way, but it sounds like there was some inner voice in your heart or something that was telling you that you're attracted to like early stage technology companies, and you decided to listen to it, and you decided to change your immigration pathway and your professional future for this. So like, was it a spiritual thing, or like, how did you listen to that in yourself, or were you even that aware of it at the time? Like, what was that like for you?
Maybe this may be specific to tech, but a lot of people in my situation, when I look at their careers over a long period of time, many of them have been in one big or two big tech companies for 15 to 20 years, waiting on their H-1B to get approved. And they get married, they have a family. And before you know it, it's too late for them to the people I know who are a little bit older in that position, they find that it's too late for them to have taken a risk when maybe at 45 they're not ready to do it anymore. So that kind of scared me because, one of the reasons I came to America is not just to make money. I came because I love tech and it's the center of technology. And if I can't be a part of that, kind of doesn't make any sense. I mean, I can go and make money in multiple places in the world. Why would I do it here? So that's when I realized I can't give up on that just to make my immigration pathway easier. If it doesn't work, the immigration, it doesn't work. But I definitely don't want to sacrifice that because that's a decision I can't go back on. And it's frankly, it could be 5, 10 years, God knows how long, that I would sacrifice in pursuit of some immigration thing, um, and let go of what I want to do professionally. In retrospect, it was a good decision for me. So yeah, I think it worked.
Amazing. That's great. That's wonderful. And then before I, go to more of the Q&A panel questions, just any other like high level tips on like, what should people know or be mentally or psychologically prepared for going into this process? You've alluded to several things already, but anything else specifically that you would advise people?
So all of the things that I mentioned definitely apply. So prepare to spend a lot of time on it. Um, Prepare to have many series of disappointments. You have to be persistent to get through this process. Um, be cognizant of the myths that you're going to hear, and don't listen to all of them, and be careful when you're listening to what people tell you about the process. I think the main other thing that I would say is it took me a really long time to get myself in a position to apply for an EB-1A because my knee-jerk reaction was, I'm probably not going to be good enough for this. And the
Which is
general,
everybody.
right,
So actually, like even freaking astronauts I've helped are like, I don't know if I'm good enough.
yeah,
It's
and
true.
so
It's
it's
human
important for
nature.
people, I
Yeah.
think, to just have some belief that you can. This is a legal case. This is not like you're not winning an Oscar right here. You're not, this is not a Nobel Prize. This is a legal case. It's if it's a
Yeah.
part of something that you want to do, just have faith that you can do the right things in order to make yourself put yourself in a good position for that application.
Yeah, thank you so much. And we've gotten a lot of really wonderful comments, people thanking you for all your writing. Somebody else mentioning, I like how you had a deductive approach to choosing the EB-1A route. EB-5, no, marriage, EB-1C, no, marriage, nope, nope, no. And then you went for it. And I think that's like a lot of, it's a good strategy. It's like, well, my goal is to live and work in Silicon Valley and have a green card. So how am I going to get there? And you just figured it out. So that's great. Okay, I want to get through more of the questions now. Um, and these are going to be all over the place, but it's great. And we're just going to try to get through as many as possible. Okay, and some of these I can just answer really quickly, and some of them I think we can have a discussion about, and some of them I'll just ask you directly. Um, the first one is from somebody who has a marketing MBA and a nonprofit management master's, and they got 2 grants for 70K for nonprofits, and they want to know if they have a chance. Yeah, like I think so. You might need to do a lot of stuff, but absolutely. You'd probably want to figure out what you won the grants for and then use that as the basis to, talk about it, write about it, get people to write about the work that you did. There's probably some underlying thing that you did in the nonprofit world that was the reason that you got those grants, or whatever you did with the grant money was probably significant. So that can be the hook for the storytelling to tie in your accomplishments together. Somebody has a question about software engineers. And I think this is probably something you can specifically relate to. It's like, as a software engineer, your work is oriented internally towards your company. So how do you strategize and how do you reach out to people? How can you prove that you've created contributions that are original to your field? How did you approach that?
This is a bit of a frustrating part of the process. It also relates to the last question where when I say the EB1, when people talk about the EB1A journey, I think there's two parts of that journey. One part is getting the foundational evidence ready, agnostic of the application, just getting the stuff there. Like if you had to judge new things to prove a judging criteria, that's a part of that process. After you're done with getting everything ready, then the part where you actually assemble the application, you get the letters of recommendation, you write, you submit all your evidence. That's the actual applying part. When it comes to preparing for it, I think the difficult thing in big companies is, as this person has said, is it's a little bit tough. You might be able to prove leading critical roles. So I've seen that a lot, but a lot of your work doesn't have publicity, so to speak. So it's rare that you're gonna have like a big tech news article write about something that you've done for a chip on NVIDIA. So your name is not gonna be mentioned on it. You may not be in a position where you're writing research papers, so there's really no public interaction with your work. The parts that are easy, I think, or the parts that are relatively easier is depending on what you do. I've seen people who work at big tech companies either do high salary leading critical role, and then for recommendations, they end up you can usually use one or two. So if you can say more about this, one or two people from the company that you work with, maybe who are skip level managers, director, somebody who's pretty important, and then you'll have to sort of figure out how can I use people in other companies in the industry to maybe vouch for me, because I don't think it's a good idea or it works to have, 6 referrals in my company of people who are my bosses, or my peers. So there's a little bit of
Yeah.
work you'll have to do. Other things that people do when they are in big tech and they want to apply for an EB-1A, or they're in a large tech company, is they'll go out and put themselves out there and participate in more stuff where that can build evidence. So for example, not that all hackathons count, but a really common one I hear is, hey, there was this big industry hackathon event and I went as a judge. And that is something that can prove that you have expertise in a certain area. Or you can work with certain media articles, or industry conference, I forget what they're called, trade journals. You work with trade journals and say, hey, I actually know something really niche, but I just haven't written about it publicly, but I can. And then you can go and write about that, and that can count towards your one of the criteria, I think published material, or one of those criteria. So there are ways. I think with the recent changes in how USCIS phrases it with the AI stuff, if you work specifically in tech, there are alternate versions of the criteria that you can use to sub out what the original criteria was. So that's also worth considering. There's more details on the USCIS sites, but these are a couple of options available to you.
Yeah, thank you so much. And I'll just mention that we can absolutely tie in press about your product or technology that the company received with you as the person who created it. We can draw those connections through letters and other evidence. And somebody was asking me yesterday if they had to disrupt the field of entrepreneurship to get an original contribution. And they're like, well, I haven't changed how startup founders do startups. I just have a cool startup. And I'm like, well, that's fine. We're going to be writing about your cool startup, not how you changed you don't have to be like Paul Graham writing the next essay on like how to be a founder, right? So there's a lot of stuff we can use, like tell your lawyers everything, and good lawyers and paralegals and legal teams will make the strongest arguments for you and tell you what else you need to do. But yeah, Deedy, I love what you said. There's a preparation phase and then there's working with a lawyer phase. And I had to disambiguate them, and that's how we can have like clear times to filing. Like you get us your evidence in 6 weeks, we file the thing in 6 weeks. It's like our standard, right? But before that, we've got the online class, we've got the legal lunch, we'll work with you, it'll take time, like but it's important to also have help at the beginning so you're focused and going in the right direction. Okay. Somebody wants to know how to gradually collect evidence, and then for judging speaking, what types of details. I mean, I don't think you have to gradually do it. I would always advise you to use, apparently publicists in certain circumstances might backdate publications. I strongly advise you never backdate a publication, even if it can technically be done. I don't want anybody accused of immigration fraud. Please don't go in that direction. I've had clients who get all their evidence in 3 months and qualify and get the thing approved. So I don't think you need like years and years of accomplishments. But if you're doing something that's kind of like not famous but can count, and there's like not a website, just get the person to send you a formal email invitation, send them a reply saying, yes, I would be honored to judge, go to the thing, take some pictures, make sure they're sending thank you emails. Like all of that is evidence that we can use. Okay, lots of wonderful, wonderful questions. If somebody published a book, can that be considered a scholarly article? How can you use that as evidence? Yes, but if you're self-publishing on KDP with Amazon, you would have to use high book sales to prove high circulation if you don't like have a publisher with distribution. So keep that in mind. Oh, this is super technical. Cross-chargeability of spouses. Did you consider dating people born in third countries for marriage for your dating pool? I don't know if somebody's trying to ask you out on a date, Deedy.
I did not change anything about how I do my personal life, but that is a thing that works.
Oh my God, yeah. And like so like there's a huge Indian diaspora in Kenya, right? So like maybe your parents want you to marry somebody born in Kenya. We can use their Kenya spot in line on the visa bulletin instead of India for you.
Yeah,
So
anecdotally, it happens all the time. Relationships are really tough on a visa. So I remember just the other day I was talking to a friend and we were catching up, and we were discussing all of our mutual friends and we're all in like sort of about to get married age and those couples. And it's like, oh, this guy, oh, he's sorted. His girlfriend is born in London. That's cool. This one, oh, he's fine. His girlfriend's a US citizen. Oh, these two, oh yeah, they're screwed. They both on H1B. So I think yeah.
Oh my God.
We all know the options. It's just about I didn't focus on any of those,
Right.
seriously.
Oh my God. Okay. Here's another question. Do you go from B1 to EB1A or should you get an O1A first? I'll just say from my experience, the backlogs are such that it's very difficult to get an I-140 and an I-140 approved and an I-485 filed within the 6 months of B1. That used to work during the like Obama years because there weren't a lot of backlogs. But now it's usually like if you're on a visitor visa, you should probably get an O1 first. Okay.
But I think it's worth saying something that comes up a lot in my conversations is people assume you need an O1 before an EB1A. And
Oh,
that's
let's talk
not
about that.
that's
Yeah.
not true. I was on an H1B when I applied for my EB1A and it didn't seem to matter.
Yes. Okay. So here's a counterexample. One client who used to play professional chess, uh, wanted to quote unquote minimize surface area for attack. So that person did a very nuanced dance of like H1B to O1A at their company, to agent petition to O1, to filing the EB1. And at that point, we're like, look, they already had like whatever it was, 301 approvals. They're clearly extraordinary. So yeah, in the past, I recommended that, but like I think this year with the election coming up, Biden's AI order, USCIS finally getting like a hold of their backlogs and trying to help a lot of people get approved right now. It's like a good moment to seize if you have a chance and maybe not get an O1A first, but it's a matter of personal preference. Oh, so many wonderful questions. Somebody's wondering, how did you bridge gaps in your profile to make it more solid? And how do you navigate through getting public accomplishments if you're like a big tech, like software engineer? I think you've talked a little bit about that, but anything further to add there?
No, I think what I said before is still stands. I think on my personal note, what I did was when I was at Glean, we had a focus just we coincidentally had a focus on filing a bunch of patents. So I made sure that I was diligent about making sure my name was on some of those because it would go a long way. When it came to judging events, I think it took me some time to realize how useful it was to just socialize the fact that I'm doing this to some friends, because then they would automatically just say, "Hey, we're doing an event. Do you want to come? Do you want to come judge? Do you want to come do this?" And good for them, win for me. And so a couple of judging events like that, just making sure I say that this is something I'm looking to do.
Right.
Uh, Other than that, yeah, if you have papers that you published in college, that helps. I don't know if you can realistically change whether you publish papers when you're already working a job. Um, yeah, trade journals is another one. Yeah, things like this, I think, generally.
Okay, great.
Awards, applying to awards that you might win.
Here's a question for you. How has your life changed since your I-140 got approved? Were you able to achieve something that you wouldn't have?
Yeah, without revealing more details, I think the way I think about my career is very different now. And everything from there's a couple of the fundamental differences is I think relationships is a huge one because the way you think about your relationships when you don't have your immigration situation figured out is very different from when you see a path. That's number one. It means different things to different people, but for me, it just means I don't have to think about any of the other factors. And when it comes to relationships, I have more clarity on where I'm going to be, and that makes it much easier for me to be with somebody else. The
That's
second thing I think is career wise, both both taking more risks in your career, putting yourself in a position where you want to start something new, thinking about what things you can do on the side to have passive income, which you could not do if you're not on, if you're on an H-1B, like additional sources of income. That's one. And then the other thing is just thinking more about where you genuinely want to spend your time. I mean, think when you're on an H-1B or some other sort of visa, you are very tightly bound to how you think about vacations, how you think about taking a sabbatical, how you think about taking a long break, what things are actually available to you career wise. And all of those things suddenly open up to you in ways that you can't see. One analogy I like a lot is, when you move to a city, a lot of people say, "Oh, I don't need to buy a car, I can just Uber everywhere." But if you only decide to Uber everywhere, the kind of places you end up going to are going to be like three places that really, really matter. Because you're
Yeah,
not realistically going to Uber on a random day to a random place. But if you have a car, you're like, I just realized my options are infinite. I could just go anywhere.
yeah.
And the way that changes your behavior is very different. So an EB1, having your immigration figured out, is like having a car versus
Hmm.
having to Uber from place to place.
Amazing. Okay. What advice would you give to someone who is dragging their feet and feels blocked in the process of gathering evidence?
I would say hard to act on, but find other people to be in the process with you who are going through the same thing. It is extremely comforting to know that you're not the only one in a shitty process. Um, that's what helped me. That's what I've seen really help my friends. So
Yeah. Okay. Amazing. Okay. We're coming to the end of our hour, and I really appreciate your time, Deedy, and I want to be respectful for what you offered to share here. I'm happy to stick around for another 15 minutes and answer a lot of these technical questions.
I could
What
stick around
we
too.
can. Oh, okay. Okay, great. Okay. Okay, wonderful. Then I'll just rapid fire through some immigration questions real quick. Okay. What is the difference in evaluation criteria between an O1A and an EB1A? For people in STEM fields, it's technical, minute differences that don't really matter in the regulatory language. The big thing is that artists can get EB1As, but if you want a O1 visa as an artist, you're probably going to get an O1B because it's easier for artists. In the 18 months where you're waiting for an EB1A, do you have work authorization or you're not allowed to work? You get work authorization either from an underlying valid visa status like an H-1B or an O1A, or when you file your I-485, if you're in the US, you include an I-765 work permit application. And when that comes, usually 2 months after filing your I-485, then you're allowed to work. What are all of the possible memberships for IT computer science researchers that will satisfy the membership criteria? The list is endless. It's an infinite world. We probably would never put your field as like IT computer science researcher. You'd probably be some, very specific niche subfield. And then we'd probably look for you to be in organizations that leaders in your field go to network for those organizations. We can use anything as long as it's connected to what you do, and there's no master list that you have to check boxes from. Is Indian patents good? Is design patent okay? What else should we look for patent? Patents are very flexible. We can use patents from other countries. We can use filed or pending patents from the US. This is an art form. This is not a science. Lawyers, so engineers need the bridge to work every time in every weather condition for any weight of truck or person to walk across so that nobody falls in the river. Lawyers just need one client to get approved once. And so it's a very, very different art form of storytelling. It's subjective. It's non-deterministic thinking, which can drive engineers insane. But probably if you're somewhere in the patent process, we can probably creatively find a way to use that somehow. Well, you're waiting for your I-485. Does it restrict you in any manner? For example, can you switch a job to a different employer? If you are in L1 or H-1B status when you file your I-485, you should be able to travel internationally without getting advanced parole. However, during the Trump administration, there were reports of people being denied entry on H-1B or losing their I-485 or something. So we started advising people, even on H and L status, to wait for your advance parole before traveling. So that's one possible restriction. If you're on an O1 or an F1, you're going to be stuck in the US when your I-485 is filed until you get your advance parole or combo card. And then whether you can switch a job to a different employer, you can always switch, you can always leave the US and you can always quit your job. The question is really, can you get back into the US and can you start another job? So yeah, I mean, you could do an H-1B transfer to another company while your I-485 is pending. But if you want to keep your I-485 and it's a self-petition, we want to make sure your new job is still in the field related to whatever we put in your EB-1A. So part of what we do when we craft the EB-1A self-petitions is to make it broad enough so that you can do the future type of work you want to do and keep your green card process going. If you're on an employer-sponsored I-140, I-485, and your I-485 has been pending for more than 180 days and you want to switch to a new company, that's another thing. That's an I-485J for same or similar occupation portability under AC 21. So basically, if you want to transfer your I-485 from like a big tech company to a small startup, it might be challenging because it's probably not a same or similar occupation as the one you were initially sponsored for, which is why people want to self-petition. How many Q1 papers is bare minimum required? There's no bare minimum requirements. We just have to prove how awesome you are. So some people have 3 papers, some people have 27 papers, some people have 5 citations, some people have 500 citations. Like, it can all work. How does being an early stage startup employee help with the process and meet the EB-1A criteria? In my opinion, early stage companies are flexible. Founders want to help all of their team members achieve their personal, professional, financial, and immigration goals. And so it may be easier to get notoriety. You could be part of marketing efforts. Maybe it can help with PR for the company and you can be involved. I think you had some of that, Deedy, right? Where folks at Glean were willing to support you and you're able to have new opportunities as a result, right?
I think you're right. Yeah. So at a smaller company, you just get more exposure. At Google, I wasn't like you aren't even allowed to speak to the press on half of these things. So there's no question that it's not gonna, a lot of things can't work. At Glean, even all the things I mentioned, so being invited to events, being allowed to go speak about the company at events, that's only positive press is great for a startup. Any sort of press is great for a startup. So
Yeah. And the CEO is going to be like, what? You want to just help us get publicity and get more users? Okay.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah, great. Okay. How does the criteria work for people who are non-engineers? Would it be significantly harder? No, we get green cards for party planners, for translation company linguist experts. Like it doesn't matter. You don't have to be in STEM if you're like an artist or the one thing is lawyers, they don't like EB-1As for lawyers, but I have heard of somebody who did it. You'd have to be like in the business of like I am like a law firm founder, right? So I wouldn't be able to get one as like for my brilliance as a lawyer, but I could do it for my great job with marketing of immigration for startups or whatever. So we have to be creative about the field. How many hours did you invest in collecting your evidence and getting the recommendation letters?
I don't know. I would say that when I was at full velocity, you're talking, it's not, it adds up, but it's about, I would say I was doing 4 hours a week and that lasted 4 months. So I think
Well,
maybe around 4 months, and I would say at max 4 hours a week. And it's just small things, right? Like you email a person with a recommendation draft and they say, actually, I don't want to write a recommendation, or they don't reply, and then you have to follow up. And
they're on sabbatical in Antarctica with like no internet off grid, and you're like, what?
exactly. Or you're trying to like get another, judging thing in, but that's starting in a month and they want you to do some things for it. So adding up all of the hours for both prep and bringing your application together, it does add up. And like Sophie said, like the actual application is massive. Like these are 500 plus page applications. Then don't let that intimidate you. It's a lot of evidence, but it takes time to get everything in and to assemble everything together.
Yeah, yeah. How does somebody show sustained achievements without awards or publications? Well, sustained just means like over a period of time and showing an effect on your field. So lots of things will be time stamped. It doesn't just have to be an award. Which path is faster? EB1 is the fastest green card path for anybody in the world. Is doing a keynote session classified as judging? Maybe, or maybe we could do it as leading in critical role in a distinguished organization, or maybe we could use it as evidence of your original contribution, or maybe you got paid for it, so it's high remuneration, or maybe you're in a group of speakers, so we can use it for an association, or maybe you were picked for it as an award. There's a lot of ways we can use it. You don't have to overthink it. Like, give your lawyers everything.
I think on that point, I think the USCIS had a special addendum calling out tech conferences or
Yeah.
keynote speeches, and I forget what criteria, but it's definitely useful.
They issued 2 policy memos in January 2022, making O1As easier and EB2 and EWs easier. And then somewhere along the way, they sprinkled in some website updates, making EB1As easier as well. Somebody is an F1 student. They're going to graduate in 2025. Is there any program in Alcorn that can help guide you through preparing an EB1A? Absolutely. Start with my online class, Alcorn Academy. Do the videos, follow my homework in there, do whatever you can, try to get some stuff done. And then when you're ready for us to take a look, sign up for legal launch, and then we'll let you know what else you have to do or if you're ready to move forward. Can somebody change their status from OPT to EB1? Yes, we got the government to clarify the guidance on like Christmas Eve that if you have an I-140 pending, it's no longer a detriment to qualifying for OPT or STEM OPT. And the State Department guidance from 2022 says, as long as at your F1 interview, you have an intent to depart on this trip, you can get an F1 visa. So we have all of the ingredients for people on F1 and navigating through OPT to self-petition green cards at a very early stage now. In case of denial, do you still keep your place in line with an EB2 or EB3? Yes, except for fraud. Don't commit fraud. If you're denied for fraud, it's going to mess up all your immigration stuff. But if you're just denied because you're not extraordinary enough, it should have no impact on your prior EB2s and EB3s. Can the administration change following elections in November this year affect the acceptance rate for EB1A? Yes. Next question. Do you recommend any chat? Oh, this is for you, Deedy. Do you recommend any chat GPT wrappers that can help with the EB1A petition, such as drafting the recommendation letters, etc.? I don't know if you have any thoughts on.
Nothing specifically, but you can use ChatGPT and a couple whatever.
I just feel very cautious around putting your personal identifying private details into something that other people's stuff, that models can get trained on. So if you use it, I would recommend using it generically and piecing it together.
What I found particularly useful, Sophie, was that because you're writing for a different audience that may not understand your technical work, ChatGPT actually, that aside, that's the concern you can deal with the privacy, but it helps in rewriting things and phrasing things that you may not be able to articulate to a normal person very, very well. Like,
especially because it's good at being like happy and peppy and positive and simple and clear and like distilling really complex scientific knowledge into like, this is how it works. So
yeah. So I use that a lot for like everything like search and machine learning and related. I'm just like, please write this for a non-technical audience.
Okay. Globy, Stevie, I think somebody said you blog that they're worthless, but might help you qualify attorneys, or there's a lot of debate on this in the internet EB1A world. What are your thoughts on this?
I mean, all awards are only as valuable as you ascribed them to be. So like, what is the value of an Oscar if no one cares about an Oscar, So the same way, it's just an award. If it helps you accomplish your EB1, go for it. And like Sophie said, there's no hard and fast rules. People spread a lot of myths like, hey, I did this and then I got rejected from my judging criteria, which may be true, but it doesn't mean that you can't do that and also be accepted for your judging criteria.
Maybe your lawyer just didn't do a good job of explaining why it was cool, or maybe the person reviewing it approved one with the same judging criteria before but was having a bad day and forgot, and they're inconsistent. Like, there's not like a ton of QA on the nitty gritty of these.
And just to illustrate how random that process is when we reapplied after my NOID, we barely made any changes to this application. We made a couple of things here and there,
Yeah,
but it was
yeah,
almost an identical
yeah.
application, and that was accepted the exact same way.
Like approved immediately.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, it's crazy. Okay, somebody on an L1 worrying, and you've been writing about tech layoffs. So like somebody is another reason why people want this. They're like, I want job security. So they're wondering if like the EB1 is a path for job insurance. Yeah, if you can get to the I-485 stage, yes. And you could also look at doing a change of status from your L1 to an O1 petitioned by an agent to allow you to work on an itinerary of services to have multiple roles, including your current company. But that could be like a quicker way to maintain status in case of layoffs. What are all the sites to calculate high salary if you know the job number? I mean, this is stuff your lawyer should do for you. There's tons of like wage sites, government databases, Glassdoor. Like this is an art form. This is not a science. I don't care if you're in the 0.1% or the top 9%. Like we're just going to make whatever arguments we think are best. So you don't have to overthink those types of things. How does startup equity contribute to high salary criteria? Well, if you're a startup founder and you've raised a Series A and it's a priced round, and now you own 37% of your company, and there's a valuation of, you know, post money valuation of $32 million on your startup, I'm going to say that your equity, you know, is worth like $10 million or something. And that looks like a high salary, right? So we can make any type of argument. So that can be true with like being an early stage employee and having like advisory equity or founding equity. We can make similar arguments with like stock options and bonuses at companies. So it's just showing that like whatever you did is worth money, which is a signifier that it has value. So that's just another way to prove that you're cool. Deedy, how did you approach your recommendation providers? Did any of them have concerns? You mentioned that some people didn't respond or they said no. So, you know, is it just like, okay, pick yourself up and try again with somebody else?
Another really frustrating process is just sort of mentally just sitting there looking at a screen and jogging your memory about who do I know that's important that I've worked with. It's not like something that's on top of anyone's mind. I had a list, I came up with a list about 10, 15 people. I reached out to them all, and some of them were straight up like, no, I don't do this. Some of them were like, I didn't respond. Some of them were like, no, sorry, I don't have time for this. Some of them were just afraid to be involved with the government. It's just like I don't want my
Right.
name. Yeah, like I just don't want my name on anything like this. So
And a lot of people just do it all day long. They're like, yeah, I'll sign whatever, give it to me.
yeah.
Our
Um
process today is we'll ask you to generate 10 to 15 possible people who might be able to help. And we're going to whittle it down to the 4 that we want to prioritize to help you have the strongest case. And then you can reach out to them and be like, hey, I'm working on this process. I'm thinking about creating a letter. It could be helpful. It comes from you. I plan to have, you know, a completed draft available for your review, and any edits you would like to make by such and such date. Would you be willing to sign it if I were to provide that to you? And then they can say yes or no, and then we get it done early, and we can look at other people if necessary. But we're getting these approved with 4 letters right now, so it's not like you need 20 signed letters or anything. I don't want to give people that impression. Okay, somebody's on OPT, they have a business, they want to do an EB1. If they get denied, will they lose their status? My recommendation is always maintain a non-immigrant status. So like do an EB1A, but if your regular OPT is running out and you don't want to deal with STEM OPT, make a plan to do a change of status to O1 before the end of your regular OPT so that you're always maintaining status. The EB1A is great if the EB1A is approved and your I-485 is filed when you're maintaining status. And then you could abandon your H-1B or your O-1, but otherwise you need to have a backup plan. And under Obama and Biden, like I didn't care if people let their H-1B or O-1 lapse while their I-485 is pending, but under the prior Trump administration, I would always recommend to maintain your underlying non-immigrant status while you're waiting for your I-485 to get approved. Your EB1A was approved in fall of 2023, right?
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, because I remember calling you and I was like running around TechCrunch Disrupt in between my talks. We were figuring out the strategy. September. October. Do you remember what your field was for EB1A? I don't
I
know how.
want to say it was search AI something computer something. I
Yeah,
don't
it was something technical and cool, and you're very good at it, and it was accurate. It was narrow,
Yeah.
and we worked on it based on your evidence.
I want to say it was search AI entrepreneurship, something of that sort together.
Okay, great. I have 12 minutes to eat my lunch before another 8 hours of meeting starts. So we're gonna have to wrap it up there. I wish we could have answered everybody's questions. This was incredible. Deedy, thank you so much. We had so many people sticking with us for these extra 18 minutes that you were willing to spend with us. And thank you so much. Thank you for sharing your knowledge, your wisdom, your opinions, your experiences. I know everybody here loves reading what you write, and we just really appreciate it. So thank you so much for joining me on this webinar today.
Thank you, Sophie, for hosting it.
Okay, everybody keep in touch. Follow Deedy on his blog and on Twitter/X. And if we can be a resource, you guys know how to find us. So thanks, everybody. Have a wonderful rest of your day. Bye.
Bye.